Hello, and welcome to another episode of TA Tech Unboxed, the video cast that is interviewing the people behind the technologies that TA and HR teams use every day. If you're listening to this show, jump over to our YouTube. We'll put a link in the description where you'll be able to see an unboxing of our guests from every show. I'm Chris Haslam, and I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Darren Bush. Mr. Darren Bush, how the devil are you?
I'm very well, Chris Haslam. I'm doing well. I'm doing well for an evening podcast.
And who do we have on today's show, Darren?
So, Chris, we've got Robin Choi, who's a CEO and co-founder at HireSweet. He's passionate and deeply involved in science-backed modern recruiting, hosting a podcast called The Modern Recruiter since 2020. And he shares every week about techniques and recruiting innovation on LinkedIn. Welcome to the show, Robin.
Thank you for having me, guys. Very happy to be here.
You're the expert on podcasts, so hopefully we'll learn a little bit as well from you.
I'm nervous. Do you have two podcasts? Because I know you from A Players.
Yes. So there is A Players, which now has become the Modern Recruiter. And consistently has much more views since it's named that way. The content didn't change, just the name. But anyway, that's a different discussion. And then there's one in French, because I'm from France originally. So also I have one in French. That's pretty much the same theme, but in French.
Jealous. And so I'm multi-skilled podcaster.
And you're CEO as well, running a company, about 25, 30 employees as well. Okay.
Yes.
Amazing.
You've got the... trying to understand a little bit more about you and your experience and then your team before we go into HireSweet. Do you want to give us a quick intro to HireSweet? And then our first question is always, what brought you into TA Tech? What's your background? So can we start there?
All right. So the short story is we created HireSweet in 2016, so 7 years ago. Last October on October 10th, and we started working on it like 6 months before we created the actual company.
Can I ask Robin? Can I ask what were you doing before that? What made you do that?
We were students, so we were still in university, business school, and we launched HireSweet as part of our business school final year. So 3 people working together. The original idea was, do you know about the what's it called again? The cloud score. Do you remember this? Does it still exist? It's a social media score that takes like your LinkedIn followers, Twitter followers, Facebook, etc., and gives you a score. So it's written KLOUT if you want to check it out. So let me know if it still exists. So the original idea was to do a cloud score for software engineers based on GitHub and Stack Overflow contributions. Then the idea for this was to sell this to companies to assess software engineers. Then we realized that the public activity wasn't enough to assess software engineers. Then comes Ismail, our CTO, who's been doing a lot of competitive programming. He did the International Olympiads in Informatics. He was coach for the French team. So he really knew how to assess software engineers using algorithmic exercises. And so our first product, like the first iteration was doing the cloud score for software engineers, but we never really had a product. We had a few slides. Then the first actual product was an assessment software for software engineers, for companies hiring software engineers. And because Ismail had a lot of experience doing this, we had a pretty good test in a few months, and that worked. We started trying to sell this to companies. A few companies bought it, but most of them were like, okay, the tests look great, but we have nobody to take those tests. So what if you help us find the engineers? We'll pay for the tests. We won't use the tests, but as long as you help us find the engineers, we're fine. And so that's kind of how we, to answer your question, that's kind of how we got into recruiting. And at first, we're like, well, that's pretty simple. You post a job online and you wait for people to apply, right? Like we never worked, we worked as interns, but never an actual job. So we thought that like software engineers, you just post and like everybody and you wait for people to apply. And then we realized that it wasn't as easy, that you had to go after people, to be proactive, to source them, to engage them. And then again, 2016, there was some data on LinkedIn, but a lot of data was also scattered. on GitHub, Stack Overflow. A lot of engineers didn't have full profiles on LinkedIn. That really changed over the past 7 years. And so part of the job was to find those people, and part of the job was to get them to reply. So we engaged with them. We had because we knew nothing about recruiting members, so we exposed our clients' names and we exposed the missions, and so that made us have a very good reply rate because we wrote the messages that we'd like to receive ourselves.
And at that time as well, that was pretty unique, right? That was super early.
Yes,
for somebody who wasn't an internal talent person. Yeah. 2015 to 2016, whatever it was.
Especially in France, because we started in France.
Right.
So,
what are you there? What are you advertising yourself as a company though? You're a like agency in some ways, but you've got this assessment tool in theory that you're funneling people to. You're getting paid.
No,
are you getting paid for a placement fee as well at the end for doing
we stopped this assessment tool at all when we realized people weren't paying for this, but for the actual placement, and then we charged a placement fee of 15%.
Okay.
And we did two things. Either we engaged with a candidate ourselves, and that was like a kind of full service recruiting agent. The companies engage with the people themselves, and that was much cheaper. And even like the first clients that worked with us, we didn't even agree on a fee. So when they told us they hired someone, that was on August 10th, 2016. That's when we realized there was something there. We're like, okay, how much do we charge them now? And they went for 3%. We went for 6%. I think we kind of found a middle ground of a few thousand euros. And we're like, wow, we're rich. Still students. So like, that's a gold mine. Let's do this. There's a huge opportunity there. So that's kind of how we got started. And then, and then because Ismail was still here and like, obviously pretty much leading the company as well, very much involved. Like, we don't want to be simply a recruiting agency. Let's find out how we can add tech to that recruiting agency to automate the work. The goal being to be a software company, not a recruiting agency. And then I'll spare you the next 7 years where we did a lot of pivots. We launched in the US, we applied to Combinator, got selected, moved here the first time in 2020. Then went back to France the day before the lockdown started. Then now back here for about a year. And today we do two things. We have the software that is a productivity software for recruiters. In the meantime, we realized that finding the leads wasn't so much an issue anymore because it's much easier to find people on LinkedIn. Like LinkedIn search is actually pretty good. You can find people. People have a lot of internal databases as well. So the goal is not so much finding people anymore, but getting them to reply. And if you go to Sourcing Summit, SourceCon, like over the past years, the theme for the talks have really changed from finding people using complex Boolean searches, going to exotic websites, to how do I get them to reply. So the software is very much focused on how to get people to reply, how to move a prospect to a candidate. So we integrate with the ATS, and we can also work as a standalone tool, especially for staffing companies. So that's one part of our products, that the HireSweet CRM, kind of inspired by HubSpot. The goal is to be the HubSpot of Salesforce or for recruiting. And the other product is HireSweet Marketplace, which is very much an automated hiring agency where we still charge a placement fee. That changes. Today it's 12%. And we have a team of people engaging with candidates, nurturing the candidates, then clients logging in.
Like Hired.
Exactly.
Like Hired or Hacker Job.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
You could call it a Hired clone. And
is it? Have you got a particular talent bucket that you're aiming at for there? Is it engineers?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah. So the CRM is for everyone, and we have people using the CRM to hire accountants. The marketplace is what we call tech talent, so that would be engineers, data scientists, product managers. Yeah.
So CRM is I'm building something that's proprietary and mine.
Yeah.
And you have a system where you're building a database of your own and giving people access to it.
Yes, exactly.
Cool. Wow. More than I thought we had. Do you also have, because I noticed on the site, you also have your algorithms, you have an algorithm section. Are you still doing the assessments?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, so we don't do the we don't do the assessment per se. So we don't do the algorithmic exercises anymore. and we stopped doing it altogether in 2016.
Right.
But we do have some kind of cloud score based on the public information, so LinkedIn, GitHub, anything that you have, and also the notes. If we connect to the ATS, we'll look at the previous notes. So we use that to rank and to match people and to suggest actions. And then again, it's based on not LLMs, not the latest generation of generative AI, but deep learning, neural networks like the previous generations, embeddings to connect scales together. And we've always had about a third of the team in the data science and engineering team.
And that's available in both CRM and
it is.
What is the other product called?
Marketplace.
Sorry, my bad. Cool.
Darren's taking notes.
Yeah, he's got it. Darren's done his research more than I have. Wow. I mean, that's a story.
That's a
what
story.
What about? Tell us a little bit about the founding story. So, of course, you've got. You talked about the. If this isn't different, by the way, we can cut this bit, of course. But the founding. When was the peak moment? Then you thought about the pivot from kind of marketplace, which I guess is what you originally were, marketplace, to the CRM. Where was the
I don't think there was such a thing as a founding moment. We always had that like underlying technology, and our mission is always to help people be more efficient in recruiting, remove add transparency in the recruiting processes, remove delays, etc. So that's like the underlying mission. And then with this technology, you can apply it to different use cases. During the pandemic, for instance, where everybody was going remote for the first time to that scale, we started doing speed dating for recruiting over Zoom. So it wasn't Zoom, it was another software, but we did this. And for 6 months, there was about a dozen people were hired through that model that just lived for a year when everybody was going remote. So we've always led experiments trying to find other ways to leverage the technology. And the technology for the CRM, it's been really evolving from 2016 to today. So there is no real founding moment. It's just like at some point we're like, okay, this is going to be a standalone product.
It's kept like snowballing into different things as you've been testing new environments and seeing angles, and that's created what we know as the CRM element today in the marketplace.
Exactly. Right. And following what our clients need as well. Yeah.
We've got a question later, which we might get the most. Oh, no.
Yeah, I'll be back in. Yeah.
All right. Well, hold then. There we go. We've got a question at the end of the show, which we always ask, what's next for HireSweet? So we'll ask you that at the end, because I'm sure there's some super interesting stuff in there. As we cut back in, Darren, do you want to? You got a question?
Yeah. I want to ask about Y Combinator. I know it's probably not to our regular audience, but can you tell us how you got onto Y Combinator and what was that experience like?
Yes. So Y Combinator, you apply online and then you find in an application that's supposed to be for very early stage companies. So it's very much about what have you achieved? There's a few specific questions that are very famous, like tell us about a time where you hacked a non-computer system. Then you have to find an answer like something that you hacked in real life. So that's the application.
Yeah.
And then if you're selected, you have an interview. The interview, there's 2 ways to have it. So now I think they do online as well. Back then it was only either in person in Mountain View, near San Francisco, or, and we're very lucky, they had a few dates in Paris in the office of a company that was just opposite the street from us. So it was like a 2-minute walk. That was incredible.
Stars aligned.
Yeah, exactly. We had people coming from all around Europe to that interview. It was just across the street.
And so he was just like, where'd you come from? Just there. You can see our office right over there. Just turned up.
So that was actually pretty cool because some people stayed there and waited for hours before the interview, and the interview is 10 minutes, so it's super, super quick. We ended up being selected also because the company was already 3 years old at this point, 4 years old. So we had revenue, previous traction. We had a pretty much very obvious proof of concept. So that would have been a big mistake for them to not accept us, because they also take a 7% equity stake in the company in exchange for 150K. So that was an obvious bet for them.
I wanted to ask about candidate outreach. Because you go to your website and you talk about, HireSweet can increase the reply rate by 50%.
Mm-hmm.
Just be really good and interesting to unpack that. How do you do that?
So the first thing is there's two things really. The first one is just being able to be strategic about outreach, and especially follow-ups. So if you just follow up twice, you get twice as many replies. And that's a number that we see consistently across everybody. There's a lot of people who still cannot follow up sometimes, but it's not really organized. And then if you follow up across multiple channels, if you send a LinkedIn invitation, and then everything is connected. So if you send a LinkedIn invitation, at the same time, you're like, hey, Chris, just sent you a LinkedIn invitation. I just also want to send you an email to give you more detail because I don't have enough room on LinkedIn or whatever. And then you follow up on LinkedIn and over email. So that's very efficient. That's the first thing, like being very strategic about it. And the second thing is measuring and improving and running experiments. Because if you don't measure, it's impossible to improve something that you don't measure, right? So just the fact of measuring and running experiments and A/B tests has a huge impact on the reply rate. Because you're then able to, and that's also back to the first thing, to be really strategic about the outreach.
Interesting. I'm into this world a little bit because I run the sales for Move. So we were a Sales Loft user. We've been a Lemlist user. We've been an Apollo user in the past. So I love this little space. We're also a HubSpot user, by the way. I know you're saying you're trying to be the HubSpot for recruiting, which is super fascinating. So can you just unpack a few features? I know we're going to do the demo and everybody's going to have access to look at it, but like just unpack a few features because you mentioned there sync. So I find applicant. I assume I sync them. How do I sync them in the CRM? Do I scrape from LinkedIn?
So I would say that there's even three big stages. The first one is how do you find people, then how do you engage with them, and then how do you nurture them. So like finding people, the features that we have are the Chrome extension where you can import people with a click from any website, so you can import them. Still in finding people, we can connect to the ATS through the API. So we'll sync with the API, refresh all the candidate database, and allow for a search in the database. So that's how you get the information there. And then we have a search and we have a recommendation system. So when you open up a new job, you can either search yourself, pretty much as you would on LinkedIn with a few extra fields that we only have. And you can also rely on the recommendation system that will do shortlists based on your existing database. A big part on getting more replies is as well, obviously, reaching out to people who are already warm. Because if you reach out to cold contacts, lower reply rate, obviously, then people would know you already.
Which is the folks that you've already got sitting in your system or that might have been... Right, okay,
exactly, cool. Or passive.
How do you track the warm candidates then? In terms of like, I know they're in your system, but how do you... Because I remember a couple of years ago, Adam Gordon brought out Candidate ID, and that's the first time I'd seen what I'd say an agency world come into the TA world, where it had a point-based system, people who were engaging. Do you have something similar, or is it what you do?
We have something similar, and we talked to Adam about this, and I really like his vision about the scoring system, and I really think this is where we also need to go at some point. The way that we do it for now, it's only in the recommendations, so the shortlists. It's based on all the previous activities that you had with the person. So it looks at the interview notes, it looks at the previous actions, and then weighting with the likelihood. So you get the likelihood that the person is interested and the likelihood that the person is interesting to you. And so we run all this and we generate shortlists because it's not so much about like this person is a 92 over 100 or this person is an 88 or a 76, like these numbers don't really mean much. Just what you want is this person is, look at this person, they're relevant, and then decide whether you want to reach out to them or not. So that's how we do it.
Is that just with warm, or does that happen with cold as well?
That's only with warm.
Because you need the data
already,
from the...
Exactly,
right.
Yeah.
I see. And then with cold, so I've now, let's say I've brought someone into the system, a prospect. I can connect through the platform on LinkedIn, or do I get bounced back to LinkedIn to connect?
You get a Chrome extension So whenever you're on someone's LinkedIn profile, you get that Chrome extension on the right side of the screen, and then you click import and import
That
the
gets
person.
them import,
Yeah.
and I can do that in bulk. So if I've got a
You
short list,
can't do it in bulk.
I think LinkedIn allows you to do in bulk. I think that's the main challenge.
Individual profiles. There are
Yes.
tools that do this, by the way. If anybody wants them, DM me, but I can't say them out loud on here. And then once I'm in, so let's say I've got my shortlist in the system. I've now got my options to run outreach to these individuals. So I need to have found a way to get their email address publicly, of course. HireSweet, does HireSweet scrape?
We don't, but we have integration, especially one like preferred partner, which is Contact Out. So when you buy HireSweet, you can get a discounted Contact Out subscription with credits that run directly into HireSweet. So you click on a button. It's exactly as like any other tool. So like find
and
email
then,
and that goes through.
And then inside there, so let's say I've got my 100 applicants. I haven't connected with anybody yet. Inside the system, so do I, let's say I'm looking at my long list. I'm like, right, I want to start connecting my sequence. First step in my sequence is run a connect. That is, I assume I bounce out back to LinkedIn with the Chrome extension and I hit connect, great. And then can I send in-mails? Again, is that the same thing? So bounce straight out like HubSpot?
Yes,
Great.
exactly.
Okay, interesting.
The difference with HubSpot, though, is when you go onto LinkedIn, you get the Chrome extension with a text that is ready. So the template is ready. You just have to copy and paste it into LinkedIn. And once you do it, it's detected automatically and then moves on to the next person automatically. So it's much faster.
Unless you have HubSpot Teams, sales teams, which I have, and you can do it inside HubSpot now. I don't know if you've seen that.
All right, I'll look into this.
I'll send you a video. I'll send you a video after.
Okay. Because we started doing our sales outreach on HireSweet outside of HubSpot because of this. Like makes it much faster on HireSweet. So I'd be curious to look at it. You have a
particular team seat, which is super expensive. But we use here because I wanted the guys to do stuff inside HubSpot so we could track what was going. But that's interesting. Calls.
So FYI, you can use HireSuite and then use the BCC address so that everything gets logged into HubSpot. If like just even so better. You know.
Okay, noted.
And
calls. And calls.
And calls. So text messages can go through HireSuite. You need to get your own phone number on the side. So there's a bit of setup here. Calls, we don't have this yet, but we're working on it so that you can really like call straight from the software.
Awesome. Like a all-in-one prospecting tool for like a sales prospect tool, but meant for recruiting. Excellent.
And we're also working on WhatsApp that we'll have in a few weeks.
Cool.
Great. On outreach messages, obviously, that's been you talk about again the increase in the reply rate. Do you do anything around creating or adding any ChatGPT integration yet to craft the messages, or is it all generated by the recruiters themselves or from their team?
So we were like, as you know, very interested about the LLMs, generative AI, and looked for a lot of ways to use it in a product, but like solve for existing problems instead of problems that people don't have. One of the problems that people do have is creating the first sequence. There is a lot of friction here. Like, what do I say? It takes a lot of mental load. So we've implemented GB, the OpenAI API, to generate the original draft for the sequence. The personalization will do it, and I don't exactly know, because I haven't found a way to really make it work with just like the API, and we played a lot, and the personalization ended up being very average and very poor. So we haven't found a way to make it work for now, but we'll definitely keep trying to do it. But also, we don't see a lot of people really doing like a lot of entire personalization sequences. That could be.
I haven't seen it. Yeah.
That could be personalized by AI. Usually, it's like very human.
Triggerify have done a really good job for sales teams. I took a demo with them the other week. I don't know if you know. I think it's Matt.
Triggerify.
Max Mitchum at Triggerify, who's an ex-recruiter, funny enough, who's moved into automating workflows for sales teams. He's done a really good job of taking multiple data sources, but it's like the layman is not capable of automating the data points that you need to create the personalization. Like you need an expert to create it. But he's done some really cool work there. We've been looking at some stuff for our sales team. I'm a big advocate for personalization when we're selling, and it is labor intensive, as you agree. Like writing a sequence is a process of writing, review, repeat, test. Do you A/B test? That's a good question.
Yeah, like do our users A/B tests?
Yeah, so can we sequences next to each other or messaging at each stage?
Yeah,
Great.
yeah.
That's a tool. I think big black hole for a lot of, particularly in sales, but I assume for a lot of recruiting prospecting tools is that they miss this element, being able to see the effectiveness of a message over time. Super clunky, right?
And then you get also the pipeline conversion across the entire pipeline. So it's not only replies, but positive replies, and people that are interested, and then move on to the interview stage.
What do they call that? Is it like tone? Then there's do a really ugly version of this, don't they? With smiley faces.
Yeah.
So horrible.
There's a lot of smileys in Limelight. Images.
What about just for our listeners here? Have you got any tips for sequencing stuff that you've seen that's worked?
Sure, I do have lots of them. We could do an entire hour on this. I did write a guide, an entire guide on this. So the answer would probably be check out the guide, and if you want
to download the guide, okay, we'll make sure a link goes in the
it's free. It's a Notion. The number, if I were to give 2 things, okay, let's do it. 3 things. The first one is follow up. That's the best thing you can do. Second one, and the call to action, make it very easy to answer positively. So a lot of people will be, are you open to talk about this next Friday? That's not easy because that's a big commitment, like 15 minutes, 20, 30 minutes of my time, big commitment. So I usually don't reply to this. If you make it very easy to reply, like, do you want to see more information on the job? Do you mind if I send a recording of the hiring manager explaining the job? Do you mind if I send a more detailed job description? Very easy to reply yes to this.
Super interesting.
Yeah. And
lower the friction.
Exactly. Lower the friction. Optimize for the reply.
It also is, particularly in InMail, is encouraging a response to the InMail, not to bounce book a meeting and you get the InMail back, right? I think it's a big black hole. Folks don't know. Same with Connect up top. I remember when I first looked at our processes and I was like, the guys aren't dropping a Connect first. Do you know that if we get 50 connects in 100 from those, you're missing 53 InMails or 53 messages that you can send in there. So a lot of folks don't know that stuff.
And then those people will see all your LinkedIn posts, and next time you want to engage with them, you can still go through so yeah, absolutely. I agree with this.
What about deliverability? Are you noticing, because I spotted Outreach the other day, who's a sales enablement platform, posted a note on the new Google and Yahoo spam filtering. I mean, I don't know many recruiters that are sending 5,000 messages a day.
Yeah.
But it does concern me that I think that's going to get narrower and narrower over time. How is HireSweet affecting?
We don't do much on deliverability, exactly for the reason that most of the messages we don't you can even send in bulk, but I think there is a limitation. So you can send about 50 messages in bulk or 100 or something like this, because we're not really built to send 1,000 messages per day. And that's when you hit the deliverability issues things. And there's a lot of websites that are very good at this. I would say that if you worry about this, you probably worry about the wrong thing. Because if your messages are really personalized, interesting to the person, make it really easy to answer, you shouldn't see any big deliverability issues. You're not to the level
unless you're getting hit spam. Unless all your messages are going spam.
Yeah, but then why? And so I don't think it's worth it for recruiters to build a specific skill in deliverability, because and also you don't have enough people. If you want to hire JavaScript engineers in the UK, there's maybe 10,000 people, 10,000 JavaScript engineers in the UK, and you don't want to burn them all. So you don't want to send all those 10,000 messages at the same time. You'll probably, and even in the 10,000, there's 2,000 that are interesting to you. So we're not to the same scale as sales. So yeah, I wouldn't say not an issue for us, though obviously you want to keep an eye out for everything that's deliverability.
The only part of that is, like you say, is if a lot of your messages are getting this is spam, Google will
yes, and also that creates, but that's also a very deep trend. Even with AI, there is more volume, there's more spam, more messages. And if you try like, if you're focusing on deliverability, you're focusing on wrong thing. You should be focusing on how to build a talent pool of people who already know us, that are interested in what we have to say, and how do I nurture them so as to, if you're fighting with these Google spam filters, they'll always win. And when they win, you're burnt. And if you create your own community, then that's a huge competitive advantage.
Community, and I've read a lot about them. Google's and trying to move us, and LinkedIn trying to move us more towards, because they've now capped the number of connection messages you can send without a recruiter license, right?
Not yet. They have connected. I think it's like 100. I think
it's 100 total, but there was never.
They're going to do it at 10 a day. I think that's the future.
Right. So they're pushing us towards wanting to advertise on LinkedIn, right? You want to use single image ads or video ads or grow your community. So for folks listening now that don't know about this stuff, like, building community now is a good idea.
Yes.
Getting now. And they're also capping, even like prioritizing audience builders, aren't they? I noticed if you are if you're a new audience builder that hasn't posted more than once a week for the last 6 months, your reach is going to be limited. So stuff like that. So we're starting to get under the cosh for this. So the need to get control of how you a system for prospecting talent is becoming super.
Robin, you mentioned about the 3 tips. You talked about follow up, call to action. What was the third point?
Let me find one quickly. The third tip would probably be there is no free lunch. If the job is bad, if the company is terrible, if the Glassdoor ratings are poor, you won't get replies. And if you do get replies, people will churn then during the interview process. And people spend a lot of time optimizing for all the techniques, and they should. But also, the big part of the work should be to focus on the job, make sure it's interesting, make sure you understand the differentiators, so you know how to sell it. And that would be the non-tip of doing the hard work, and engaging with people personally. And too many, in 7 years, there is this, evergreen fantasy that comes back every year of I called it the fully automated recruiting machine, the farm, where you just click on a button and then candidates, A++ candidates, come and join your company and they're ready to go and you don't have to do anything. And that's missing the entire point. The point of recruiting is that it's competitive. If you hire someone, your competitor won't have that person. And if your competitor is beating you, they'll get all the talents, not just 50%. They get all. If they beat you if they're just 5% better, but it's enough to have that threshold where they close everybody because they're 5% better than you and maybe pay 5% more or something like this, then you get nobody and they get everybody. And that makes the success or the failure of a company. So it's competitive. It shouldn't be automated away in a way that we don't have to care about recruiting anymore. Okay, recruiting's fixed. We don't have to think about it anymore because this will never happen. And it's the same for mass personalization. The day that we have an AI-powered, very efficient mass personalization, nobody will reply to messages anymore. So back to building your own community and doing the hard work of
Well, think about it. If there are mass automated messages going out, as with application forms at the minute, then you're going to get mass responses, and it just becomes AI to AI.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then we meet someone at the other end, and we're meeting a horse because it worked out to press the button to send things off. So I totally agree with you on that. I'm
going to use that analogy of the farm. I like it. Is this the same farm that breeds unicorns as well?
That breeds what?
That breeds unicorns.
What do you mean?
Yeah, it says
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's fantasy.
Can I ask about on your website as well? You talk about the productivity tool for recruiters.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the bottleneck that you see in the recruitment process?
So one bottleneck that we don't address is the intake, kickoff, discovery meeting, call it whatever you want, I see that people don't invest as much resources and time here than they should. They end up wasting months and weeks and months down the line from this. We don't address this. I don't really know if there's anyone addressing it, because it's like a lot of training, mostly just making sure that people train. So that's the first thing. And then because of this, then you get poor job description where the candidates don't exactly understand what's expected from them, and then you get to reach out to people that are not relevant, and the entire process then stems from this. And then there is the outreach part today, which is finding people, engaging with people. It's just hard work, and so people, lots of companies, then again, second fantasy, maybe another farm, they're waiting for that secret hidden website where all the candidates came to hide, and where if they find this website, they can engage with them. A few years ago, it was Facebook, then it was Twitter, now it's Discord. But everybody's on LinkedIn, so they're okay, we want to find that website where people are, but nobody reaches out to them. No, it's just difficult. You have to do it, and you have to do it.
Reality is they're there, Robin, because they don't want to be reached out to. They leave places like LinkedIn. I always find that it's
I don't think they do. I don't think they do, actually. That's not something that we've seen in the numbers. There is more and more people on LinkedIn, and if people don't want to be reached out to, if they don't want, they just don't reply. But a lot of people on LinkedIn, and there's just okay, this is my resume. Obviously, if somebody pays me twice as much as I'm being paid today, or for a company that's twice as interesting, I'll make a move. So I want to be on LinkedIn. I want to display my information. But most outreach messages I get are shitty outreach messages, or for companies that seem that not good, and the pay is not as good. So I don't really think people live in LinkedIn. I really wonder. That's kind of I keep hearing about this, but we don't see this in
theory.
Yeah,
it's a theory I hear as well. It's the fact that developers aren't on LinkedIn. They're on other places, because they're going on LinkedIn. I'm sure they get spammed. They go into their LinkedIn messages. I mean, LinkedIn messaging is terrible as a place. I mean, it's impossible to keep up to date with.
And as a practice as well, I think typically recruiters write terrible outreach messaging. Exactly. Coming in from sales into this, in looking at our own messaging, right? It's we work really hard on trying to optimize that messaging. I know your playbooks, Robin, have been circled many, many times in training sessions with our team.
Nice.
It's super difficult when you put three recruiters together. There is no standard, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is no standard. CTAs are probably the worst part.
Mm-hmm.
In LinkedIn messaging. Whenever I've jumped in with juniors and tried to explain what a call to action is, they've got 4 at the bottom. They've got 4 at the bottom. Funny enough,
just
one that engages in sales quite often is what we look for, is a soft affirmative call to action. Yes is fine. I'd like to know more.
Mm-hmm.
Yes is fine. It's a response to an email, so it's good for deliverability. It's an affirmative response for next steps. Yes, you can share more information. Yes, you can share your meeting link. Is way more better than hey, are you free next Wednesday at 2:00?
Yeah,
because you've sent that 50 times, and then all of a sudden that slot's not available, and you're just unpicking that, right? Or you just send a Calendly link, which goes into oblivion, and you end up never engaging with anyone who doesn't want to speak to you. And I agree with you as well, Robin, going back to your point on follow-ups. I remember when I first mentioned that to the team, they thought I was crazy. Well, you want to send another message? Yes. No one's reading that first message.
But they didn't want to reply to me the first time, so why are they going to reply to me the second time?
It's so silly,
I don't understand.
Yeah.
I don't want to be desperate.
Exactly. Yeah, I've seen that so many times. If the person doesn't reply to the first message, that means they're not interested, and that means they're busy. I don't really understand the idea behind it. I don't want to follow up, because if the person's really interested in the company, they would reply to the first message. So I don't want to have second tier people. I don't know. I've seen that many times.
But you've got no one. That's what I do.
You've got no
one from the first message, and the talent pool's not getting any bigger unless you're going to wait for you.
That's because outreach doesn't work anymore, and then people yeah.
Should we talk about the recent announcement with OpenAI? I know that you're very much interested in that, and you've been. I've been looking at your posts as well. You've been working hard and creating your own GPT. So you can share into what you're doing at the moment.
So we've been. I created a first kind of GPT they call Recruiter GPT. It was originally a spreadsheet a few months ago connected to the OpenAI API, and I created a script, an app script on Google Sheets using ChatGPT to write the script. So that would request the API and send reply. So the common use cases are writing a job description, summarizing interview notes, writing an outreach message. So there's a few use cases like this. And last week, OpenAI released what they call GPTs, which is like well, I don't know if it's the best name for it, but they call it GPTs. And they make it easy for anybody to create their own kind of recruiter GPT. And it solves a lot of problems that I see. One of the biggest problems I see in companies that have larger recruiting teams is how do we make sure everything is standardized? How do we make sure that the output looks the same? And GPTs can be an answer to this because you can train the GPT once. You're like, this is Facebook's recruiter GPT. And you use it, you send a job description, and it will just reorganize it in the Facebook way. And if it misses lacks information, it will ask questions. So you can do it.
So
it also
build something that's right for your own company with your own language, right?
Exactly.
You can coach it to create a standard for you.
Exactly. Yes. Another thing that's very, very interesting is you can feed it a lot of best practices. So this is what a good, like, ChatGPT has no idea what a good recruiting message looks like. And it's, if you ask it to write a recruiting message from scratch, it will ask a pretty terrible one because there's more terrible messages in the training data set than good messages, because there's more terrible messages in the real world than good messages. But then you can teach it best practices. So you can use our content. You can use our competitors' content, for instance, Gem. There is a very direct competitor. They're great at content. They do a lot of great content. They did one white paper on how to write a good outreach message using their data. So you can give that to ChatGPT or to your own custom version, and then it will get better at the task on hand. Same for generating interview questions. So if you give it a list of standardized interview questions that you use or that you find useful for your company, it can generate new interview questions as well. So that's pretty exciting. I'm currently in the process of, we discussed this. I don't feel I can show it for now because I felt like it's kind of alive, but not very proud of it for now. But I still need to revamp it a bit.
He says that, but on November the 16th, you have a LinkedIn Live, right? On November the 16th, where you're going to unpack it. Yeah, you got 48 hours from this recording. Unfortunately, it will be after we've launched this show, but we'll try to grab. There must be a recording, right?
Yes, you can put the link. So it'll be on the same LinkedIn event. So if you can use the link, you can use this. I'm also doing a workshop in Canada next week about that very specific topic in Montreal. So yeah, I think it's very important that everybody stays on top of this, plays with the thing, sees how much they can use, and yeah, stay on top of things.
So in terms of you having playing around with it, you mentioned a couple of use cases. Where do you see it going then? Where do you see like in terms of an internal TA team? What will they be doing with the GPTs? Like creating like job advert template, because we have a job advert template here at Ericsson, so we have it and make sure that everyone sticks with it. But it's a struggle like any templates.
Yeah, it's a huge struggle. We talked about 6 months ago. We talked with a huge staffing agency, like world leader, because they were looking for ways to standardize their job ads online on their website. And we'll look at them, and it's all over the place. Like they all look different.
I remember.
They all look different.
Yeah. The different markets, it's just down to the recruiter. If you haven't got the structure, they'll create things, and it'll come from the manager as well. So it would look, and you know, when you say you call up American Express, you call up, whether you call up the US or you call up the UK, you're getting the same service.
Yeah,
getting the same customer support, and you want that to be the same if you're applying for jobs in these different locations.
Yeah, and even like if you look like different locations, at least you could kind of understand. But here I'm really talking this like the same agency, same city. Like same kind of jobs, different descriptions, because it's very hard to do at scale. And we had, so HireSweet on the marketplace, we have every candidate on the phone. We discuss with them for 30 minutes, and then we write a summary from the call. And same, we had a template, and it's about 120 new candidates per week, so 120 new blurbs to write per week, and that's spread across the team, so it's like 15 to 20 per person, so it's not huge. But it's very hard to keep it standardized. And now what we say is to say, okay, you fill in that template, it goes through ChatGPT, and all the summaries look the same. Doesn't mean that it feels robotic. It's just like as a user, you know where to get the information. You know that if you look for the school, it will be in the first sentence. If you look for the motivation, it will be in the fourth sentence.
So you're structuring the information you're giving it in a similar way, but you're allowing ChatGPT to then optimize it to look like a HireSweet.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
So that's a
have you
big
tried
use
using
case.
Have you tried using MetaView yet?
I haven't. Awesome. I know you had Sayal on the podcast, and I'm very impressed with their product. Heard a lot of great things about them. I haven't tried MetaView yet, so I definitely want to try.
Sayal, we're gonna have to set this up.
Yeah,
we have to set this up.
Should drop it in.
I mean, actually, it takes us on nicely.
Well, so.
Yeah, it takes us on nicely to our last two questions of today's show. And what I've done here is I've filled the space so that you can't use MetaView, because MetaView's been brought up as one of the tools that everyone's keeping an eye on. What TA tech are you seeing in the space that isn't HireSweet, of course, that you think is going to have a big impact on the market?
So the main, okay. So I see a lot of people using kind of interview recording tools, MetaView kind of tools. There's several. I definitely think one will like win that space, and there's going to be something here. I see recruiting teams using sales tools as well, like the sales recording tools. It's the number one use case, the most easily applicable. You end the interview, you already get your interview notes. You can share that with the hiring manager. That's like 30 minutes safe per interview. That's huge. So that's one thing. I really believe there'll be more on the candidate search. There's a lot of tools doing kind of scraping LinkedIn and fetching the results. The Seekout, Entelo, HireEasy of the world, and some of them are using LLMs and generative AI to make it easier to interact with. One of them being PeopleGPT from Juicebox. You might have heard about them, and I've seen a lot of people use this tool as well. So there's definitely going to be something there. I think there should be something for if you write more than to like 10 jobs per month, you should have some sort of standardized thing. I don't know if there's anyone there yet. Probably be created straight into the ATS or the tool that you already use, or LinkedIn or whatever. But I think there should be something there.
For writing job descriptions?
Yes. Job description, job ads, and
so you're talking job ads, yeah?
Yeah, we wrote. We had a good pod with Bradley from Applied, who have got a tool that is mainly for removing bias from your job descriptions, but it does, of course, do a lot of optimization stuff in the product as well, which is, I think, it's free to use, Darren. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it's free to use.
I'll say Applied and Texted, but there's no one really. I think, like you said, there's a gap where there's no one creating job adverts, because there's always the opinion that the tools can't create it. Yeah. There's technology still can't create it. It has to be done by a recruiter, but yet it's always down to there's nothing really to support them, to enable them to kind of make it better. And therefore the adverts are quite poor. So we're back in that vicious circle again.
Yeah. And then I believe there will be just much more AI embedded in all the tools that we're using, the ATS, LinkedIn. More people will use ChatGPT on a daily basis, or Bard or Anthropic, whatever is your thing. But it just becomes ubiquitous, and we'll use it all the time. You know, like I'm in the process of changing apartments here. So I had ChatGPT review the lease agreements. I had like lots of things will happen once every few years, but I go straight to ChatGPT for it. So it's a long train of very different tasks that will just become much easier to do.
I think the term co-pilot keeps being thrown around in these shows, right, for AI, and I genuinely believe that's what it's going to be. We'll be able to do our work with a little bit more efficiency and a little bit more structure and optimization with it. Our final question for the show is, what's next for HireSweet?
well, I think we hinted at this. Like, there's a lot of things. There's like the possibilities are endless for HireSweet. So in terms of strategy, we're going much more into the staffing space. So less for internal in-house teams, but more for either temp staffing, agencies, consulting.
I said hello.
Yeah,
That's me.
Exactly. People will
You might
use
be a buyer, Robin, on
Yeah,
this show. That's the leverage of the Sell the podcast. You can reach out to
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
People will use HubSpot and want to have a dedicated tool. Anyone? So
Nice.
yeah, pretty
Hello.
much. And that means we'll be doing more features also for to go after clients and client management. So we'll do more of this, and you'll soon have the ability to manage your clients in HireSweet.
Oh, interesting.
And then there is much more that we want to do on like building. And I really think we're not so much focused on like high volume personalization and sending and like deliverability and all this stuff, because I think that's an endless race, right? You reach a point in 6 months and then you get caught up by Google spam filters, and then you need to keep iterating. What I think is
it'll also be
Yep.
be a threat in a moment in time, right, Robin? That it'll approach you super quickly, and you just fix it. You'll cap the number of
Exactly.
sends. Yeah,
and
exactly.
You're always stressed out because you're like, okay, what will happen in 6 months? What I think is a sustainable long-term competitive advantage is building your talent pool of people who like you have a relationship with. And we'll go much more into this as well. So for instance, we already have the QR code, so you can scan a QR code and as a candidate join the talent pool. So you're not applying for a job, you'll just like, okay, I'm interested in the company. I'm not applying just now, but I'm interested long term. So keep nurturing me, keep building that relationship.
Keep deploying me
Definitely, I'm a big fan of that. I don't understand why the companies don't do that at the moment.
Yeah,
why? A lot of stuff is it is. And then I wrote about this as well, about how companies say I'm not hiring at the moment. They just have these little blockers, like, but there's nothing else to say. But I've come to your webpage and I'm interested. I'm a buyer, and you're saying nope. Nothing to you.
I'm worth £20,000. I'm worth £20,000 if you don't get me now.
Yeah.
If you don't get my information, I'm worth 20 grand to you. So why don't you take my email address or something?
Yeah.
And maybe ping me an email once a quarter and say what we've been up to. You know, like I always think like it's a marketing funnel, right? And I'm not asking for companies to email every week with new content. Just once every 3 months. What's new? What have you been up to? What did the Christmas party look like?
Yeah, and if you think that you can offer something better than what I already have, well, do reach out.
Keep posting.
Even if it's every few years.
I'm happy. I'm happy to apply again or to let you know I'm interested again. But don't forget me, because I'm worth £20,000 to you. I think that's the thing is companies don't align. They don't see that downstream block or that pain point, right? It's like actually that individual that's right now is not. I was speaking to someone earlier because I think people don't do it also live in funnel, right? It's like if you're only seeing candidates that are saying yes to you, so using a recruitment agency as an example, and that's your only source for seeing candidates, you are missing probably 99% of the talent pool that's giving you a bunch of information. So you're only seeing, let's say, 3 to 5 applicants that have been sent and packaged for you. The challenge you've got there is it's an echo chamber of success. You think, there's loads of these. I want to see 5 more. I'd like to see 5 more. I'd like to see 5 more. And the pool is diminishing over time because you're seeing the 1% in that first round. You're not seeing all that data in the 2 weeks of outreach that's saying, hey, you can't afford me. I'm not interested in this type of company. The value proposition is not resonating with me. That project's not interesting to me, but I like the company. You're not getting any data. I find that as for some reason, everybody outside of TA doesn't see these issues, and they don't go, that person that wants to work for me is a £20,000 invoice, or 6,000 or whatever pound invoice. If I get this wrong, that's my fallback position, right? That's the worst possible thing you do is pay a percentage fee for a hire. Because that's the most expensive. It's not the worst way. It's just the most expensive way to do it. So totally agree with you. The big bastion, the next big mountain to climb is like I don't like poo, like community talent community, and engaging with them consistently. Have we got any tech on, Darren, for this kind of stuff? Meet and Engage was a bit like that, wasn't it? Who have we got coming up? That's
Community ID is a bit about this as well.
It is, yeah. It's now part of iSIMS, but no, we haven't got anything on. No one coming up on that.
We need to.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing.
I mean,
And also
Holoru is probably in that mix as well.
Sorry, Robin.
Yeah, no. Also because it's sustainable. You can sleep at night if you have your talent community, and then you know that you're nurturing people, and maybe it's not growing super fast. Maybe it's growing like 3% per month, but then you get more people, you engage with them, and then once you have a job for them, they're likely to reply. Makes it much easier to sleep at night than knowing that the second that Google spam filter catches up with you, then you're dead, right?
And then you can switch AI on and get the AI to automate a message to the talent community and say, hey, we're hiring.
Exactly.
It's at that point that you can go. What a fantastic end to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great
It's
fun.
already over. No way.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
It is. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks, Robin. It's really good.
Yeah, it's been cool.
I think we could turn this into 3 shows quite easily if we did.
Yeah, definitely. There's loads of show notes as well, links that we'll put into the podcast as well that you need to give us. And
make sure folks.
And how do people reach out to you?
I'd say LinkedIn. Even though I'm not exactly on top of my LinkedIn emails or messages, but I do reply to them in the end. So definitely LinkedIn, or engage with my, leave a comment. The best way is leave a comment on my post on LinkedIn or things like this, because I check all the comments, and do send me a message as well.
Thanks so much for joining us. It's been great fun.
It's been
today. That brings us to the end of today's show, everybody. If you haven't already subscribed, please do. Down below. If you're listening, jump over to YouTube where Robin will be unboxing HireSweet. Thanks so much. That's TA Tech Unbox signing off. See you later.